Hi, welcome back to Married with Gaming. I'm Jen.
I am still Mike.
And
True.
today we're just going to talk about some of our thoughts on RPGs.
Yeah, and you wanted to talk about putting skills into old systems that we did,
Yeah,
or
so
something like that?
we were kind of talking about how, so when we started dating, I had limited experience with RPGs, but one of the first games we played, my character was an herbalist. And I really enjoyed like playing that skill. So like when we would make, camp for the night, we'd roll to see how many herbs I found. And then not only did I get a number, but I eventually had a whole list of different herbs and what they did. And you had, as the GM had provided that to me, I really enjoyed that. And it's something that over the years I've seen less and less and less of incorporated into games, not that skill specifically, but I kind of miss that because I feel like the skills really
Skills that actually matter.
They matter, but they also add like personality and individuality to character, I feel like. And they can be fun to role play.
Well, because what I was running is second edition AD&D.
Yeah.
But I had my mind converted it from first edition D&D, which didn't have real skills unless you go to Oriental Adventures or the Wilderness or Dungeon Survival books, right? And then they did them as non-weapon proficiencies. But I had played other games, and so being the person who doesn't play things right, I just would take things from other games, and I used a percentile system instead of the non-weapon proficiency system, because I thought it made more sense, because I initially borrowed before I knew the real rule.
Right. Well, I know, like, I don't know why Brian E sticks in my head, but I remember I had like a notebook and I wrote everything down. I had a whole list of all the herbs, and I just think it's
right. Instead
fun.
of just having I don't want to bash modern games, but it seems like it's your skills are roll to solve. You have a problem, you roll to solve the problem, and then the problem's done.
Right. And I think I think something like that allows for more interesting resolutions and problem solving through the game.
Right. When a character naturally gravitates to, I want to learn what herbs to collect and what their properties are. And then you say, okay, well, your character learns a little bit. And I think you had a book and you learned like a few of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then you gain more as you leveled. And I don't remember the process because it's been a while.
Yeah. Yeah, now it's just very generic. Oh, yeah.
It was kind of like discovering spells. Like now, when you level, it seems like in current games, it says you pick certain spells and it tells the player they pick him instead of you find them in game.
Well, yes, and in that same game, you always had, like, in order to learn a new spell, you had to find a teacher or
pay.
A book.
Yeah, find it or pay for it. And I remember people that we played with even back then had, they were kind of like, whoa, I got to go and, you have to transcribe it or be tutored.
Right.
And for me, I like that. I like training. It makes you feel connected to the game world.
Right. So now if I say I have medicine or I have herbalism, I don't get a list of what herbs I find. I don't get a list of what type of herbs I find. They say, okay, you find some herbs. And then when I go to say, well,
you find healing potion herbs, or you find
or I say, do I have any herbs that will help with this? Oh, roll a dice and see if you have herbs that help with that.
I think the initial system that I pulled from a long time ago, I thought it was, it might have been percentile inspired because of Palladium. And then I looked at Palladium. It doesn't really have an exact herbalism skill, but I think I either pulled it out of Middle Earth Roleplay, MERP system, which is percentile as well, as far as I remember. But it had like, in the game, it had like way of this and this, and since it's kind of being Middle Earth, it's not like D&D where it's like boom fireballs. It's very subtle and the magic progress, and so that's where I think I might have pulled it from. And so it wasn't like campaign crashing. Like you could always have access to craft or brew a thing, but you had to go and gather it. And it's like, this region has possibility for these herbs. And then you spend some time, you get them.
Right. And I don't remember if I ever had a character that did this, but I remember somebody was a Bowyer Fletcher as a skill. And I remember saying, okay, we're setting up our camps for the night. And so somebody saying, okay, I'm going to sit and make some arrowheads or gather some sticks and make some arrows during the game, which that's not a big deal. It just ensured that we don't run out of arrows in the middle of a fight. Or if so many arrows, oh my gosh, we've been shooting so much and we're getting low.
I've noticed in a few games that people have praised it, which I'm like, they have it's some kind of like usage dice. So like you have like a D20 of arrows, and then if you roll a certain threshold or roll a 1, then it reduces to a D12 of arrows, and it reduces. Now I can say use that if you're going to if you're just going to do something like food in the desert, if you don't want to count. Right. But when you're doing arrows, count.
Yeah.
And then you can also do a thing where 1 in 6, the arrow isn't usable anymore or something, roll afterwards. But if you fire it off into a griffin that flew overhead, you sunk like 5-6 arrows into it, it flies off because it's like fails a morale check. Again, something that isn't commonly used anymore, but or the DM just says it flies off because it got hurt a lot. It got 5-6 arrows in it, or you missed and they flew off into the woods. You don't have those anymore.
Well, and I don't want to say we should get bogged down in minutia of stuff like that, but use those things can come into play when you've been traveling for 2 weeks. And the DM can say, all right, you need to realize you're getting low on arrows because you haven't been able to restock and you haven't been able to recover everyone because, 10% of your arrows a week are gone, or something.
But I think in a lot of cases, minutia matters. That's my opinion. Minutia matters.
I think in situations it does. I'm not saying every game session you should have to be counting arrows. If you're near a town and you have easy restock access, who cares? But if you're out in the wilderness for weeks at a time, it's going to matter.
Right. Or if you're a elf or a ranger that does hunting a lot, you can basically say, I'm constantly, crafting.
Yeah.
And you can go, okay, hand wave it because you're only, a little bit out of town. I can, but when it does matter, I don't want somebody to shoot off 100 arrows and it's like,
right.
You're not counting.
Yeah. So situational.
Well,
when it matters, it matters.
Yeah. And just like, being out in the woods where you can easily gather food, including like either mushrooms to eat, things like that, because your character is all skilled in wilderness survival type situations. I don't think if you just say we spend an hour, foraging, then if it's an area that you can forage, just forage. Mm-hmm. I don't like the thing where you have the skill and like roll to fail.
Yeah.
Or roll in like a character who goes, well, I only have, let's just go with the 1 to 20 scale. And they only basically trained in it. And all of a sudden, natural 20, automatically get everything they want. That's why I don't like that trope of natural 20.
Yeah. And it just seems like now when we play a lot of times the skills you get or the skills everybody has or 2 or 3 characters have the same one. So there's nothing unique like that. You don't have like the herbalist and the alchemist. And I think those things are cool. And sometimes you're out of spells. You don't have anything else you can do, but oh my gosh, I just remembered in my bag, I have, some herb that I picked that can be
that
poisonous.
Has a lot to a game when you're, if you want to call it down to the wire, you're out of your spells, you're out of everything. And you're like, what can I do? Oh, I have this, or I have an idea.
Yeah. And sometimes, I mean, I play a lot of magic users of different types versus the melee types. Sometimes you're like, I got nothing. There's nothing I can do, But if I have resources, like I have herbs I can use, I can, run up
Right.
and do this thing, then it makes you feel more useful. And sometimes that can really add a lot to your character and make you more connected with them as
Yeah,
well.
the older version of the game where you move from one to the other, and they incorporated more skills as the games have gone on. Like I didn't take the first edition, I didn't leave them behind when I moved to second edition, and like when I played first edition, we kind of hacked in skills before we had the books because being poor kids, we didn't have instant.
Yeah.
We went to a library and checked out a copy of certain books.
Right.
And they were like, "Oh, this seems like neat," but we didn't understand. We'd either copy it onto paper, or we'd make up our own systems. And I did have, I had the Palladium game, I had Unearth Arcana, I had Rune Quest, I had the Middle Earth role play. And although we didn't play those very much because everybody would play them once or twice and be like, "Let's go back to D&D," we'd hack in the skills and system to it, and maybe some of the more rational minutia of if you're out in the woods.
Yeah.
If most characters know how to start a fire,
right,
you should. You live in that time period.
You shouldn't have to roll for that.
But if it's if you're on Weathertop Mountain or something like that, winds howling, then that's when the skill roll comes in.
Yeah. Well, and I guess in my brain, I was thinking more about these crafting skills and skills that are not generic, that not everybody has, to make your character feel more unique and interesting.
Right. And if anybody can attempt it, and like I mentioned earlier, anybody can attempt it, and if they roll a natural 20, they become super cool, but you don't even have it trained in it.
Right.
So all of a sudden, somebody rolls survival, and they have negative wisdom, or I think that's what's side to it in the modern game.
Yeah.
And then they roll a natural 20, and all of a sudden they're super successful, where the guy who's playing a ranger rolled a 1 and was like, "Oh."
Yeah.
Which he shouldn't even have to roll to follow a trail, in my opinion. It should just be part of his class. I can do this thing.
Right. Yeah, I think if I were going to choose a weakness of most of the modern games, it's skills. And I don't know what the solution is. I guess it's different for everybody, but I know that stuff like what I'm talking about can be super tedious for GMs to have to deal with too. But as a player, I don't mind, I'll look up, give me a list or give me a resource. I'll look up stuff and write down what they do and give them to you. And you can choose the ones that are in your game.
What?
Or the current game that we play on Sundays, my character has alchemy. And that was part of the background that I chose for her. And our GM is letting me incorporate little things into it. Like now my character can make, some poisons. Now I can make some simple healing potions. They aren't as powerful as the magic ones because they're just basic chemical potions. But it's really fun that now my character has something else I can do to help the group out. I'm going to make these little, healing potions and pass them out, to the group so that we can survive a little better.
And kind of within some of the rules, that it can be expanded. You can look at the 5th edition, you can learn tools and skills without having to level and such. You can just train, which I think is often overlooked. But it adds a little extra to it. The thing too is, with any system, people don't realize you can switch out. You can change that system. You could just say, I'm going to run this game, and let's say it's a D&D game, and we're going to do, every time you level, you get so much in ranks for skills, and you can make up a whole new system and just put it in there.
Right.
Or a percentile system, or whatever, and it could work. It just takes that buy-in, and I think playing older style, people hacked all the time and added and changed and said, "I'm going to switch this out." And then it became almost a dogma to let's do rules as written.
Yeah.
But if, I include a wacky race, then that's my homebrew, and that's lazy homebrew. Your homebrew should be, I'm going to customize this so you get into it. Like, here's a list of herbs that exist in my world. Here's a list of minerals. And, yes, it's a little bit more work, but there are books that you can just borrow and steal.
Yeah. Yeah. And like when our GM was letting me learn some alchemy, I said, what can I do to help you develop it? I'll help you develop the system, because he is doing kind of a homebrew. And, I said, what can I do to help develop it? Because I'm totally into that, but I'm also the character that in a previous game, I was the one who made sure that our party had a business on the side to support our adventures. So, I like that stuff.
And that can be a good hook. Any buy-in, like the couple years ago, you've mentioned this before, you liked it, the Shadow of the Demon Lord campaign that we were doing. It was very episodic.
Yes.
Per adventure. But then all of a sudden, you guys pulled we want to build a house. And I'm like, okay. And you started pulling down roots and, being part of a community. And I was like, all right, well, it kind of changed the trajectory of what I had thought was going to happen. And
yeah.
But on the flip side, you became invested in the game world and the fate that's going to happen.
Right. And I think that kind of stuff is fun. Like I said, sometimes I know a lot of people really like combat, and a lot of people really like the, I don't know, just the general role play stuff. But I like some of the minutia stuff, like, learning new skills. I feel like even though it's my character doing that, I feel like I learn a little bit too on the way, and it's fun for me to do that.
Yeah, there's like a buttload of games at this school. This one gang kept wanting me to join because I'm pretty good with the bow staff.
So back on the topic of skills and where to get them or inspiration, a couple of years ago I found, like, we were talking for magic or herbalism. Yeah, I found this thing that's Magic and Medicine of Plants. Now this is a real book, like by Reader's Digest. So
I like it though. It has really nice illustrations.
And the magic isn't real, but it tells you what people believed that these plants would do. So this isn't a game book. It's literally an old Reader Digest book. Yeah. But you could use it as inspiration. And you can pick up copies pretty cheap. Just find them online.
You can probably go to like Friends of the Library book sales or used book sales, library sales, and get all sorts of...
It was mass produced for a decade or more, I believe. I looked it up. That's a great copy, less than $10. Yeah. You can get crappier copies if you don't care if the corners are bent or have weird smell.
Yeah, that's a nice...
But I'm saying is like books like that or regular history books and such can give you ideas on incorporating things into the game and making a skill system. I have an old book about arms and armor, which if you read how it was crafted, it matches up zero to how any almost game does it. I mean, your average blacksmith in a small town or even a regular town is not going to make armor.
Right.
That is a very specialized thing.
Shoes,
nails, spikes, mostly farm equipment, and even a lord. His blacksmith is going to be making that stuff over because it was very, very small number of people that made arms and armor.
Yeah, but then I think
they were good.
It just matters on how much realism you want in your game. So
right, so a village of 500 people isn't going to have a guy crafting plate mail, or even have the patterns for it.
Yeah.
But the thing too is, like you said, using, not just for the herbalism, but for other things you can put into the game you can kind of like, whether you're playing BX, AD&D or whatever, you can kind of put a different skill system in there or add things to it. and then add details to it.
It just makes the game more fun and immersive, in my opinion. I mean, it's fun to me if I'm thinking about my character in between game sessions. You know, if I'm just showing up, I'm doing whatever the story of the week is, and maybe there's a bigger campaign, but, you know,
right,
it's like, still very episodic. And if I'm not thinking about my character in between the game sessions, then I'm still having fun while I'm there, but it's way more fun if I'm getting ideas and thinking about, ooh, what could her goal be? And, you know, what could she try to learn? And, you know, what could the puzzles be? And how can I participate in that? You know, that's way more fun. A
little bit of immersion, thinking about what a certain plant is that was mentioned offhand, like, oh, it's this rare plant, you know, called Theracane. It has these little gem beads almost as seeds, and when they're imbibe, it gives, you know, some kind of, you know, almost like berserker effect, you know, but only works on elves. So that goes, So when you find something like that that's described as that, it brings a little bit more than just.
And you start thinking about, how can I incorporate that into something? How could that be useful in a situation? And I mean, the truth is, as a player, there have been many times when I'm like, I'm presented with a situation and I'm like, I don't know what to do right now. I don't think my character has anything to contribute to this particular situation. And I think everybody's had that, where all the players are just sitting around. Nobody's really saying anything because we're all kind of stuck. Like, what do I do? But having a resource like that, I have this other thing. It doesn't have to be my feat or my class skill. It can be this other skill. Maybe that's going to give me the inspiration of something I can do to move the game in a different direction or forward. And I think having those things are kind of fun, because otherwise you got 3 fighters and they all have the same skills, but then you got 3 fighters, and one's an herbalist, one's an alchemist, and one has some other skill that, you know, maybe I can do this and you can do this with our skills. Now we have a whole new.
Right, because in game they found different things that interest them.
Right.
But then that also comes back to the thing where it seems like the difference between solving problems with engagement to the game world or engagement with your character sheet.
Right.
And I think that's the thing. It's like, if you're looking at your character sheet and thinking, I have, you know, 2 attack actions or a move or this, or, you know, or like, oh, I learned that this will do this, or goblins are afraid of mandrake roots, or something weird in the game lore, you know, then you're engaging more in the game world than your character sheet, and that kind of goes back to the.
But even then, sometimes you're drawing a blank. So the more in-game resources, the more character resources you have, including skills, the more your problem solving is going to be kicking in. The more you're going to be able to come up with new ideas, new things to do.
That's literally what I just said.
Did we just re-say it 2 different ways?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be, I think it's more fun, you know, that way. And
you're not necessarily thinking, you know, where here's the rules, you're thinking inside the box. I can only press this button to win. It's not thinking outside the box. It's thinking in the moment, in the game world. And
right.
That's what I think should be more supported. And if you can do that by saying, hey, I'm going to add in a thing a player's interested in.
Right.
Or add in a thing a character's wants to do.
And for me as a player, I'm a conservative player, so I tend to not use, like, I'm playing a monk in a game. I don't use all my ki right away. I save it up, and sometimes I don't even use it. I use it sparingly. If I'm playing a spellcaster, I don't cast all my spells right away. I tend to want to use items or other mundane kind of things before I use my big powerful stuff. So if I have a skill I can use that's unique or different, then for me personally, I'm probably going to lean into that a little bit before I look at other powers I can do. Yeah, so I guess we kind of agree that skills maybe could be incorporated a little more oftentimes
Well,
than they are.
And skills should move beyond the I look at it pass fail, because there's a lot of skills in modern games. And let's pick on 5e right now. Perception is a big one. It's relied on everything. If you can figure
Everybody
something.
rolls perception. For everything.
Investigation. It's not like I go into the room and you start saying, well, I'm going to search the bookshelf. There are people that I've literally know that play in other, over the years that have said, I perception check a thing. It's like, what? Or I search a room by rolling the skill. I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I think.
And if you say, like I'm going to say, we were playing 5e, and people were saying, I moved the sconce on the wall, and the torch sconce was the thing that opened the secret door. No roll. They said they were doing it. It opened the secret door.
Right, and that's what I was going to say. Like, I know when you've run,
Stop rolling.
When you've run, you hardly ever made us make checks like that. You were like, what are you doing? Describe what you're looking for specifically. If I say I'm specifically looking to see if I can find a panel on a wall that looks like it opens the secret door, then if I'm searching the room, you're like, okay, you find a panel on the wall that looks like it opens the secret. If I just go in and say I searched the room, then you're more likely to say, well, I mean, you just see the chair and the desk. But
right,
if I describe,
you're looking around.
If I tell you what I'm looking for or specifically what I'm looking at, then I don't have to roll anything. And that's more like what I think a character would do, a person would do. I'm going to walk into a room and I'm going to look around, but unless I'm looking for something specific, I'm just going to look around.
Right, that's like saying you come up to a door and you stand there and you hit the search button. And you find a key under the mat. But if you walk up to the door and say, hey, I'm going to look if there's a key under the mat or under a rock or
I'm going to feel a ledge. Yeah.
And, if you say that, then there's no roll. And I think that's needs to be, that's the kind of play I think should be looked for, not roll to solve.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
I guess that's an extensive rant on skills. How you can just hack them from any game and throw them in your game. No shame. I mean, maybe if you played a game that's all percentile, like you played RuneQuest, right? And you're like, oh, I want to make it all D20 rolls instead of percentiles.
Then do it.
That's if you find that system better and you're more familiar with it, then do it. Mm-hmm. Or you can do it by D6s, or a dice pool, so you get a curve to your results, or you do a difficulty number. With the storytelling games, you're not beholden just because a game says this is how you have to do it. You can do the system you want.
Yeah. I don't think our ideas are very radical or anything, but, No,
because most games don't have the same system between the combat and the skills. And when they do, it doesn't match up. Because you're not rolling your skill system and taking off hit points to get a kill.
And I know from what I've seen for the more modern or recent games, there seems to be this push to streamline everything. So it's just like bare basic, which I get that, but sometimes we can go too far with that.
You can have bare basic and still have details.
Yeah. And that's the thing that I'm like, I still want some details to my game. I don't want it to. I love board games, but I don't want it to feel like I'm playing a board game. I want a little bit more meat.
Right, because you want to get lost in your character. You want to get lost in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what are your thoughts on skills? So let us know what you guys think about skills in games and where they stand right now.
And we especially appreciate it if you can make a more coherent explanation than we have
of our ramblings. So until next time.
Later.
Bye.
Thank you for watching, and please take a moment to like and sub.